Helen relaxed in the hall, her eyes sparkling as they landed on the concert tickets she held tightly. When Christina emerged from the office, Helen exclaimed, "Christina, guess what? We're finally going to see them perform live." Christina paused at the entryway, her face shadowed by concern. "Helen, I have some bad news. I can't go." Avoiding Helen's gaze, Christina added, I have something important to do." A playful suspicion arose in Helen. "Oh, is it a mysterious date you haven't mentioned?" Christina laughed softly. "No, it's not a date." Growing more serious, Helen persisted. "So what's the reason? We've been looking forward to this." Christina shifted her weight uncomfortably. "Please, let's just leave it at that." However, Helen's curiosity was insatiable. When Christina stepped away to get some water, Helen noticed a medical prescription on the coffee table. She couldn't resist and glanced over the paper. "Mrs. Emily Foster," she whispered. Emily was Christina's ex-husband's mother. On Christina's return, Helen questioned her. "Why are you still helping your ex-husband's mother, Christina? You've been divorced for a long time. Why keep her in your life?" Christina remained silent for a moment. With a gentle smile, Christina replied, "Emily's always been good to me. Right now, she needs someone, and that someone is me." Helen sighed. "I just think you deserve better. You're so caring and you're still alone. You deserve happiness," Christina softly replied. "Caring for Emily brings me a different kind of happiness, Helen." Helen and Christina's friendship seemed genuine on the outside, but it was more like a shadow of true companionship. Hidden beneath their interactions was a bond built on manipulation and selfish intentions. Christina, ever the kind and trusting soul, often overlooked Helen's actions, hoping for the best. But deep inside, she felt the uneven nature of their relationship. Whenever they stepped out together, Helen ensured she stood out. From her carefully selected outfits to her attention-grabbing comments and the places she preferred, it all seemed to serve one purpose: to outshine Christina and keep her in the background. The concert tickets incident was a prime example. Helen bragged about securing tickets to the hottest concert in town, yet she never thought of whether it aligned with Christina's musical preferences. The deeper sting for Christina, though, was during their social outings. Helen would often make unsolicited comments about Christina's single status. At gatherings, she'd parade Christina around, introducing her to any single man present, her voice dripping with pity as if Christina was a project needing intervention. But Christina could see through it. Helen's attempts to play matchmaker were not out of concern for Christina, but rather to spotlight herself and lure more attention. Christina often felt like a mere accessory in Helen's social game. Christina was a gentle soul, always finding it hard to decline any invitation, even if it wasn't to her liking. She usually accompanied her friends on their escapades, not wanting to upset anyone. However, today was different. There was another commitment she couldn't ignore. As they approached the bridge, the point where their paths would diverge, she could sense Helen's concern for her. Gathering her thoughts, Christina paused and said, "Helen, I truly appreciate your concern for me. I believe that someday I'll find the right person. Please go on and enjoy yourself. I need to head in a different direction today." Christina inhaled deeply, the crisp, cold air filling her lungs. Her thoughts quickly turned to Emily, her mother-in-law. On a normal day, Emily would have started the furnace by now, but if she was having one of her painful episodes of migraines and high blood pressure, she'd be confined to her bed. This meant the house would be even colder, especially with the sharp winter chill outside. With a growing sense of urgency, Christina quickened her pace towards the bus stop. Their home was humble, a small house they acquired after her ex-husband lost their previous apartment due to his careless decisions. Glancing at her watch, she calculated that she had about 20 minutes before the bus would arrive. With the week's earnings clutched in her hand, she decided to drop by the pharmacy for some much-needed medication. "Christina, dear, how are things with you and Emily?" Margaret, the kind-hearted pharmacist who had been Emily's neighbor for years, greeted her warmly. "Hi, Margaret. Everything's much the same. No big changes," Christina replied with a small smile. "Dear Christina, Emily is truly fortunate to have you. Despite all that's happened, you've stayed by her side," Margaret remarked with a hint of admiration in her eyes. Christina responded softly, Emily is like family to me." Margaret shook her head with a mixture of disbelief and pity. "I'll never understand how a woman as good-hearted as Emily could have raised such a son." Collecting the medications and expressing her gratitude, Christina left the pharmacy, her heart heavy with the weight of her thoughts. She had always been a firm believer in serendipity. The day she bumped into Stephen at a local coffee shop, their eyes locked, and it felt as though the universe had conspired for that very moment. The connection was palpable. It wasn't long before they began dating, and as the days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, Christina found herself falling deeply in love with him. 6 whirlwind months later, as they watched the sunset from their favorite spot at the beach, Stephen, with a nervous smile and eyes filled with hope, proposed marriage. Christina, her heart racing, agreed instantly. However, she couldn't help but point out that she hadn't even met his parents yet. Understanding her concerns, Stephen took her to his mother's house the following weekend. Emily, Stephen's mother, greeted them with a warm smile and open arms. It was a surprise to Christina how quickly she bonded with her. They would chat for hours, share stories, and by the end of the day, it felt as though they'd known each other for years. Emily had a fondness for Christina that was evident in the way she looked at her eyes shining with approval. A few weeks later, Christina received an unexpected call from Emily. She sounded both eager and nervous, and she asked Christina to visit her. When Christina arrived, she could sense something was amiss. Over a pot of tea, Emily took a deep breath and shared a shocking revelation. Stephen had been married twice before. It was a lot to take in. Christina listened intently, her mind racing with a whirlwind of emotions. What stood out, however, was the concern in Emily's voice. "He's my son, and I love him," Emily began, "but I don't want to see your heart get broken." Christina was surprised and puzzled. It wasn't every day that a mother revealed such a personal detail about her son. Still, she thanked Emily for her candor. Although taken aback, Christina expressed that Stephen had always been kind and loving towards her. Their conversation concluded with an embrace, but as Christina stepped out, her mind was clouded with mixed emotions. The subsequent days were filled with introspection. She decided against confronting Stephen, holding on to the belief that everyone deserved redemption and that past actions should remain in the past. After all, Stephen's daily gestures painted a picture of a man who was devoted, considerate, and genuinely loved her. Time flew, and soon they were exchanging vows with their loved ones around them, including a teary-eyed Emily. As they embarked on their marital journey, Christina would occasionally reflect on her heart-to-heart with Emily. It served as a reminder about the value of trust, open dialogue, and the realization that everyone carries a past. Christina often thought back to that pivotal moment. Their quaint home stood as a reminder of what once was. Stephen, with his lofty ambitions, had convinced her to sell their apartment and put the money into a seemingly promising business idea. Worse yet, he had persuaded his unsuspecting mother, Emily, to do the same. As the days unfolded, Stephen came clean about the grim reality. Not only had he lost every penny from their apartment sales, but he had also dug them deep into debt. Both Emily and Christina felt the weight of the betrayal. They were overwhelmed, dealing not just with their shattered trust, but also the relentless and intimidating phone calls from debtors. In her heart, Christina wanted to believe they were just facing the growing pains any young family might experience. She clung to the hope that they'd find a way out and things would eventually get better. Yet a more ominous cloud loomed, adding another layer of worry to an already strained household. Within the first year of their marriage, the pressure of not conceiving started to create cracks in their bond. Both Christina and Stephen had envisioned a life where they'd raise children together. Christina tried to stay positive and understanding, but Stephen's patience wore thin. His reluctance to consult a doctor was driven by a mix of fear and old-fashioned notions that equated manhood with the ability to father children. One chilly evening, following yet another quiet meal, Stephen's bottled-up emotions erupted. "Perhaps you're the reason we can't start a family," he spat out. Christina was stunned and hurt by the baseless allegation, especially since they hadn't even taken a step towards seeking medical advice. The once harmonious atmosphere of their home was now punctuated by regular disputes. The warmth and intimacy that once characterized their relationship had evaporated, replaced by a cold detachment. The final straw came when Stephen, in a desperate move, revealed he was seeing another woman, hoping she would provide him with the family he yearned for. Christina's world fell apart. The love and trust she had placed in Stephen felt like a distant memory. Raised with traditional values, she had always believed in the enduring bond of marriage and the promise of forever. Stephen wasn't just her husband, he was her first and only love. Emily was beside herself with anger when she learned the truth. "How can you walk away from someone so genuine?" she demanded of Stephen. Over the years, Emily had come to see Christina as the daughter she never had. Her son's actions felt like a betrayal not just to Christina, but to her as well. Yet Stephen, blinded by his desires, just turned his back and left. He eventually married his new flame. As days flowed into weeks and weeks into months, his new wife never made an effort to visit or connect with Emily. This thing of being abandoned by her son and ignored by his new wife left Emily grappling with immense loneliness and sorrow. Christina could see the pain and nostalgia in Emily's eyes. After a pause, Emily gestured for Christina to sit beside her, and she began to share a tale from her past. "Christina, when I was about your age, I was engaged to a kind man named Howard. I thought of him as the love of my life. I also had a close friend named Lucy, or so I believed. As the wedding preparations were in full swing, I learned that Howard had fallen for Lucy. To make matters worse, Lucy became pregnant with his child. The betrayal was overwhelming. The man I loved and my supposed best friend had turned my world upside down. Heartbroken, I watched as they moved away to start a new life together. However, a couple of years later, I received an unexpected call from Lucy. She was distraught and confessed that Howard had left her. She struggled to find love again because she was now a single mother. To drown her loneliness and regrets, she often turned to drink. While I pitied her situation, it was the thought of their young son that truly weighed on my heart. Lucy's health deteriorated rapidly. Realizing she had limited time, she asked me to care for her son, Stephen. The bond I developed with him was instant. Even though he was a constant reminder of my past heartache, I couldn't abandon him, especially after Lucy's passing. Her dying wish was for me to always be there for Stephen. I willingly accepted, having grown genuinely fond of the boy. Christina listened, tears welling in her eyes, realizing the depth of Emily's compassion and the intricate ties that bound their shared history. Christina, wide-eyed and taken aback, whispered, "Oh, Emily." The parallels in their stories struck her deeply. Both had experienced a heartbreaking betrayal from those they had believed loved them the most. It was like history had repeated itself, and they were bound together by shared pain. Christina was heartbroken seeing how Stephen's neglect affected Emily, making her fall ill frequently. Eventually, Emily had a stroke. Many of their friends suggested that Christina move Emily to a specialized care center, arguing that Emily's condition might be beyond her capabilities, and after all, Emily wasn't truly her own family. When Emily could finally speak again, even she recommended the same, perhaps to lessen the burden on Christina. But Christina's mind was made up. She saw them as family, and she was going to care for Emily. Christina held on to the belief that with enough love and care, Emily would regain her strength and walk again. Despite the doctor's doubts, Christina's determination never wavered. Christina once gently inquired of Emily, "Did you ever think of searching for Howard?" Emily took a moment, then sighed. "I loved Howard deeply, but I never searched for him. I thought, why should I? He probably had a family of his own by then." When the shuttle reached her stop, she stepped out and started her walk home. The sight of smoke billowing from her chimney brought a momentary sense of relief. It meant Emily had managed to light the stove, but that relief was short-lived. An ambulance stood outside their house, frosted over, indicating it had been there for some time. Panic welled up inside her, and she quickened her steps, her mind filled with anxious thoughts. Rushing inside with her heart in her throat, she learned that Emily had suffered another stroke. When Emily finally regained consciousness, she was met with a dull ache on her left side. She tried to wiggle her fingers, but they felt heavy and unresponsive. Blinking against the harsh hospital lights, fragmented memories from the night before began to flood back. The urgency in Christina's voice, the bright ambulance lights, and the calming presence of the paramedics who'd helped her. Sitting next to Emily's bed was a familiar shape. When Emily tried to speak, her words didn't come out clearly. Christina looked up, her eyes deep blue like the ocean, full of warmth that eased Emily's anxiety right away. "Don't worry," Christina said, her voice as soft as a feather. "The doctors told me you might have trouble talking for a bit, but don't worry, I'm here with you." Emily blinked her eyes, trying to say thank you without words. Noticing Emily's confused look, Christina explained, "You had another stroke, but you were strong enough to call for help, you know." Despite the advice from her colleagues and friends, Christina left her job. Many couldn't understand why she would choose to care for the mother of a man who had once hurt her deeply. But for Christina, it wasn't just about that. She often thought about how she would feel if she were in Emily's position. What if it was her facing loneliness and health challenges? She knew that if their roles were reversed, she would hope for someone to stand by her side, just as she was doing for Emily now. Christina's empathy and understanding went beyond past grievances. She wanted to be there for Emily, no matter what others thought. Over time, Emily began to regain her strength. Christina was her rock during those challenging weeks. She cheered Emily on during her speech therapy sessions, held her hand as she took her first shaky steps, and laughed joyfully when, with the help of some old tunes playing in the background, they both twirled around the living room in a makeshift dance. Upon returning to her job, Christina discovered a new management team in place. Eddie, the new owner of the company, had a keen interest in understanding his employees. He often took the time to learn about their backgrounds and unique stories. Word quickly spread about Christina's dedication to an elderly lady, and Eddie was deeply touched by her compassion. People often mentioned how she had taken care of someone with no blood ties to her. Eddie found her commitment inspiring and admired her even more. However, a detail that remained unknown to him was the depth of their connection. He didn't realize that the elderly woman wasn't just any old lady, she was Christina's mother-in-law. Christina stood in stark contrast to Eddie's other employees. From her first day, she exuded a level of commitment and discipline that set her apart. Eddie couldn't help but admire her dedication, but alongside that admiration was a burning curiosity. Who was Christina outside the confines of this office? Her personal life remained a puzzle, as she rarely engaged in the usual office chatter, choosing instead to surround herself with a quiet air of mystery. Then there was Helen. If the office was a beehive, Helen was its most buzzing bee. She seemed to know everyone and everything, and her bubbly personality was hard to miss. Be it in the break room or by the elevators, she'd always be in the midst of a lively chat, sipping her coffee and laughing heartily. While most found Helen's vibrant nature infectious, relying on her for the latest updates and anecdotes, Eddie sometimes felt overwhelmed by her constant chatter. He'd often find himself pondering how she balanced her sociable tendencies with her work responsibilities. But true to form, Helen always managed, even if it meant putting in some extra hours now and then. One busy day, a critical project landed on their desk. Eddie, as the team leader, had the job of delegating tasks. Without hesitation, he handed the most demanding parts to Christina, trusting her proven track record. Helen received a smaller, yet important portion. Days passed, and Christina steadily worked through her tasks. Eddie would occasionally check in with her, always met with a nod of assurance from Christina's end. In contrast, Helen found herself grappling. Her frequent coffee breaks and chats began to hamper her pace. As the deadline loomed closer, the office's atmosphere grew tense. One day, Eddie walked into the kitchen, finding a distraught Helen with her face in her hands. Concerned, he approached and gently inquired, "Everything all right, Helen?" Lifting her head, teary-eyed, she admitted, "I've fallen behind, Eddie. I thought I could manage." Eddie, trying to comfort her, said, "Don't worry, we'll work something out." Just then, Christina entered the kitchen for a quick coffee refill. Noticing Helen's distress, she paused. "I can chip in after I'm done with my part," she offered, surprising both Helen and Eddie. When Christina handed in her portion of the project, Eddie was left amazed. Not only had she meticulously completed her assigned tasks, but she had also gone the extra mile, adding thoughtful recommendations no one had even considered. Then, on a particularly stressful day, Christina arrived at her desk to find a surprise, a vibrant bouquet of flowers. She paused, looking around, half expecting someone to realize they had mistakenly placed the flowers on her desk. The colorful blooms brightened her space, but she couldn't help wondering who had thought of her in such a kind way. Helen, always in the loop with office gossip, thought she knew it all, from budding romances to secret admirers. But the bouquet on Christina's desk was a curveball she hadn't anticipated. While Helen usually enjoyed being the go-to for office news, it was strange to see someone as reserved as Christina unexpectedly become the talk of the town. Christina, meanwhile, was trying to solve the bouquet puzzle. A dainty card nestled amidst the petals carried a sweet message in neat handwriting. For the light you bring, even when you're not aware. But no name, no hint of the sender. Sean, from the procurement department, couldn't help but drop by. Grinning cheekily, he remarked, "Looks like someone's smitten with you," giving her a playful wink. Flustered, Christina replied, "I really can't figure out who sent them." Throughout the morning, Christina's desk became a hot topic. Speculations ran wild, jokes were cracked, and everyone seemed to have a theory about the mystery sender. Helen, trying to reclaim her role as the office storyteller, teased, "I bet it's from that handsome new guy in finance," gesturing towards a young man in a wheelchair. Soon others joined in, offering their own humorous takes on Christina's secret admirer. By noon, the attention was becoming too much for Christina. She loved the flowers, but the constant buzz around them had turned her quiet day topsy-turvy. Needing a breather, she decided to slip away for a quiet lunch outside. A few days later, Christina was engrossed in her work when a courier suddenly appeared at her desk, holding an extravagant basket of flowers. "Christina?" he inquired. She looked up, surprised, and nodded. "Yes, that's me." He handed her a slip. "Please sign here." After placing the lavish floral arrangement on the floor, the courier made a hasty exit. Helen, always one for drama, couldn't resist but approach and inspect the bouquet. Though she tried to conceal it, there was a glint of envy in Helen's eyes. "Another surprise for you, Christina. What's the story this time?" she asked, her voice dripping with a mix of curiosity and skepticism. Despite being younger and in her own opinion more attractive, Helen couldn't fathom why Christina was receiving such attention. To her, Christina was the quiet, unassuming type. "I honestly don't know," Christina responded, slightly embarrassed. "It could be a mix-up." Helen smirked. "I've never heard about any romantic interests in your life. Did you order these for yourself? Maybe to pretend someone's interested?" As Helen inspected the flowers, she mumbled about their expensive appearance. Choosing not to engage with Helen's comments, Christina simply returned to her work, leaving the flowers as an unsolved mystery. Every day, like clockwork, a fresh bouquet appeared at Christina's desk. The office was abuzz with whispers and chuckles. Helen, always quick with a remark, fueled the rumors further. Some colleagues even teased Christina with playful gestures, twirling fingers by their heads, suggesting she had gone off the deep end. "She's probably buying them herself," they'd whisper. "Who spends all their money on flowers just to feel special?" Feeling isolated, Helen completely avoided Christina, not uttering a single word to her. While Christina noticed the cold shoulder, she chose not to address it. Let them believe whatever they want, she thought, but the relentless flower deliveries were starting to affect her concentration at work. It wasn't the flowers themselves, but the incessant chatter around them. She needed to discover who was behind this and why. The mystery was becoming an unwelcome distraction. Christina was about to head out for lunch when a man suddenly held the main door open for her. She glanced up, surprised. The man was wearing a chauffeur's cap and uniform. Before she could say anything, he walked her over to a sleek sedan parked right in front of the office building and opened the passenger door for her. Now, Christina felt as if she were in a daze. Was this even real? She pinched herself to make sure she wasn't dreaming. Finally, she spoke up, unable to contain her curiosity any longer. "Excuse me, sir, but what's going on? What does all this mean? Who's behind all this?" she asked, her voice tinged with bewilderment. The driver looked a bit puzzled at first, but then broke into a warm smile. "You'll find out soon enough, madame. Please have a seat in the car." The whole situation felt like something out of a movie. and Christina was both anxious and excited to see what would happen next. The car smoothly made its way to one of the city's most elegant restaurants. The grand entrance was lit with soft lights, and as she stepped inside, the gentle hum of conversation greeted her. A smiling waiter instantly recognized her and motioned her to follow him. As they weaved through tables, she spotted someone seated at a secluded spot in the back. His back was turned to her, making it impossible to recognize him immediately. With every step, her heartbeat quickened. Who could it be? Why were they meeting in such a secretive manner? Finally, she stood in front of the table. Before she could ask anything, the man turned around and greeted. "Hello, Christina? Please, join me." To her astonishment, it was Eddie, the new owner of the company. The soft glow of the table's candlelight highlighted his features, and he wore a gentle smile. Christina was filled with a mix of surprise, curiosity, and a dash of nervousness. When Eddie first learned of Christina's heartwarming actions towards her former mother-in-law, he found it hard to believe. Such acts of kindness were rare, and he was genuinely astonished. Wanting to verify the story for himself, he decided to visit Emily while Christina was away at work. He introduced himself as a colleague from her office, checking in to see if Christina's extended leave was for a genuine reason. For Eddie, as the company owner, understanding the character and depth of his employees was vital. When he met Emily and realized that all he'd heard about Christina's dedication and kindness was true, his respect for her grew immensely. Beyond his professional curiosity, Eddie had a personal reason for wanting to learn more about Christina. For years, he had remained single, much to his mother's dismay. She often urged him to find someone special and settle down. Eddie would retort, lamenting how many people seemed to prioritize material wealth over genuine feelings and connections. For him, it wasn't about physical appearance. He was drawn to a person's inner character and values. Knowing Christina's selfless actions towards Emily deepened his intrigue and respect for her. During their lunch, Christina chuckled. "You really went overboard with all those flowers, didn't you?" Eddie looked slightly embarrassed. "I apologize if it was overwhelming. I just thought you deserved something beautiful every day." He hesitated before adding, "Honestly, I didn't know how to approach you directly. I've never really tried to win someone over before, so I guess I went a bit overboard with the flowers as a way to show my interest." Christina shook her head in amusement. "Well, thanks to your little gesture, there's a running joke in the office that I've been sending them to myself." Eddie laughed heartily at that, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I guess we've given them quite the story, haven't we?" During their lunch, Christina felt the need to be open about her past. Taking a deep breath, she said, "Before things progress further, there's something I need to share with you. I was married once before." Eddie looked at her with understanding eyes and a gentle smile. "I already know about it," he replied softly. "Your past is a part of you, but it doesn't define your present. We all have stories, Christina." This made her feel even more at ease, realizing that Eddie valued who she was now, rather than dwelling on what once was. Eddie and Christina began spending more time together. It wasn't formal dating, but more of a slow exploration. Having navigated the rocky terrain of a failed marriage before, Christina was wary of diving in too quickly. They decided to keep their budding relationship under wraps for the time being. With Emily recovering well, Christina felt like she was living in a dream. Everything seemed to be falling into place. However, when Eddie mentioned promoting her, she immediately declined. She didn't want to be under the office microscope or the subject of speculation. "If you need assistance, I'm here to help. But please, let's keep it discreet," she told him. This response only deepened Eddie's admiration for her. He felt he had indeed found someone genuine to stand by his side. However, secrets have a way of unraveling. One day, a colleague spotted Eddie and Christina in an intimate moment outside of work. The rumor mill went into overdrive. Whispers of their relationship began circulating the office. When Helen caught wind of the gossip, she was livid. She cornered Christina, bombarding her with a barrage of questions. Christina, maintaining her composure, said nothing. The silence confirmed Helen's suspicions. Envy consumed her, and she hatched a plan to tarnish Christina's image. She started spreading fabricated tales of Christina's past, alleging that Christina's ex-husband had left her due to financial recklessness on her part. Helen's jealousy was no secret. She had tried multiple times to ensnare Eddie with her charms, but he remained impervious. Eddie would laugh off Helen's flirty remarks and dinner invites, always citing his busy schedule as a reason. One day, Helen stormed into Eddie's office, her face flushed with anger. "I can't believe you're seriously considering a relationship with Christina. Do you even know her past? She was married and sold their apartment, causing her husband to run off. You're risking everything by being with someone like her." Eddie was calm, armed with the truth that he had painstakingly gathered. "I'm aware that Christina was married," he replied, standing up and walking toward the window. "I also know why her husband left her. He left her for another woman." Eddie paused, his eyes locking onto Helen's as he turned back around. "And that woman, Helen, was you." Helen was dumbfounded, her face a mix of shock and disbelief. She never thought her secret would be uncovered, but she had underestimated Eddie. Eddie was no novice when it came to due diligence. After speaking with Emily, he had tracked down Christina's ex-husband Stephen and offered him a sum of money for the truth. The promise of quick cash loosened Stephen's lips, revealing the real story. The room went silent, the air heavy with the weight of the revealed secret. Helen's schemes had caught up to her, unraveling in a moment of stark revelation. Helen had always been drawn to the things Christina had, and when she caught Stephen's eye, her envy grew stronger. It wasn't just that she was attracted to him, she relished the idea of having something Christina held dear. The secret rendezvous began, whispered conversations, stolen glances, and hidden meetings. Once, they even brazenly met up at Christina's very own apartment. But Helen's ambitions didn't stop at an affair. She manipulated Stephen, threatening to expose their relationship unless he sold the apartment. Cornered, Stephen lied, telling his family he was investing the money into a business. Now, confronted with her betrayals, Helen was speechless, her cheeks drained of color. The weight of her actions pressed down on her as Eddie laid out her treachery. "To think you would betray your best friend like that?" Eddie murmured, shaking his head in disbelief. "She's done so much for you, and this is how you repay her?" Eddie was torn. Part of him wanted Helen to feel the consequences of her actions, yet he also considered what Christina, with her kind heart, might do in his place. "I won't tell Christina about this," he finally said, his voice firm. "She's endured enough heartache already, but you will leave her alone. No more schemes, no more rumors, and while I won't dismiss you from the company, I expect you to act professionally. Any harm directed at my family, and there will be consequences." The room echoed with Eddie's final words, leaving Helen to reckon with her deeds. Helen, once the chatterbox of the office, had retreated into her shell. Christina, always one to think the best of people, was concerned for her once close friend. When Helen suddenly stopped coming to work, Christina felt a pang of sadness, but when she asked Eddie about Helen's abrupt departure, he shared that she had decided to move and begin anew. Amidst all of this, Christina had a significant event coming up, meeting Eddie's mother, Grace. It was an important milestone for any couple. Since Christina's parents were no longer around, she brought Emily, her former mother-in-law, with her to dinner. Grace was elegant. Her years of meticulous work as an accountant had given her a sharp, attentive gaze. From the moment Christina introduced Emily, the two clicked. Both had experienced so much in life, and as the evening progressed, they exchanged stories, laughed together, and found comfort in each other's company. It was clear to Eddie and Christina that a beautiful friendship was blossoming between Emily and Grace. As Christina became more involved in Eddie's business ventures, their professional collaboration turned heads in the office. Whispers turned into open discussions, and before long, everyone knew about their romance. The two had become the most talked about couple at the company, but this time for all the right reasons. At the office parking lot, a familiar car caught Christina's eye. The office was almost deserted, with everyone heading off to celebrate New Year's Eve with their families. As Christina was about to head home after wrapping up her final report, Eddie stepped out from behind the parked car, holding a huge bouquet of pristine white roses. "Come on, it's New Year's Eve. Work can wait, Eddie playfully chastised her. Laughing, Christina replied, I'm sorry, love. Just had that one last report to wrap up. That night, in the warmth of Eddie's home, they enjoyed an intimate dinner. During a quiet moment, Emily arose from her seat, her eyes shimmering with tears. She gazed deeply at Christina, emotion evident in her voice. I might have lost Stephen, but in his place, I gained a precious daughter and a wonderful son. Fast forward 2 months, Eddie and Christina were happily married, and in another 4 months, Christina decided to resign from her job. At Eddie's gentle insistence, the couple had even more joyous news. They were expecting a baby. Christina's story was a testament to the power of resilience and kindness. Despite life's challenges, she held on to the values her parents had taught her, to always lend a helping hand and to be kind. And as they said, kindness would always come back to you, sometimes even tenfold.